I still remember the cool touch of the champagne flute in my hand, bubbles rising like my spirits. $20 million. The biggest deal in company history, and I'd closed it after 6 months of sleepless nights. My office door swung open without a knock. Richard stood there with Melissa from HR, both wearing expressions that didn't match the occasion. "Harper," Richard said, his voice flat despite my achievement. "We need to talk." Melissa placed a manila folder on my desk, sliding it toward me with manicured fingernails. My name was typed neatly on the label. "What's this?" I asked, though the pit in my stomach already knew. "Termination papers," Melissa said softly, "effective immediately." The champagne suddenly tasted sour. I set it down, hands trembling slightly as I opened the folder. "Cultural fit issues," Richard explained, not meeting my eyes. "The company is moving in a different direction." The words blurred on the page as fury rose inside me. 6 years of loyalty ended with a folder and a lie. Through the glass walls, I could see my team watching in confusion. They'd been waiting to celebrate our victory. Now they were witnessing my execution. I looked up from the papers, my shock turning to something colder. "Did you even read the deal terms, Richard?" Looking back, I should have seen it coming. 6 months of 80-hour weeks, building relationships with vendors that Richard could never maintain. I'd become the company's backbone, fixing problems he created, smoothing over his awkward pitches with clients who preferred my straight-talking style. I stayed loyal, believing in our mission, despite Richard's growing resentment of my success. I even covered for him during board meetings, giving him credit for ideas that weren't his. The breaking point came when I found an internal memo accidentally sent to my inbox. It detailed Richard's presentation to the board about his $20 million deal. My name appeared nowhere in the 12-page document. Instead, Richard had detailed his strategic vision and relationships that made it possible. What hurt most wasn't the betrayal, but the timing. He waited until I signed the final papers, until the money was guaranteed. Then he cut me loose before bonus season, ensuring my commission would never materialize. I delivered everything he asked for. His response? A folder and a fake smile. "The board thinks you're difficult to work with," he'd added as I packed my things. "Too independent, not enough of a team player." Translation: I was making him look bad by being good at my job. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't beg for my job back. When Melissa handed me a cardboard box for my belongings, I simply nodded and began packing my things. "You're taking this well," she whispered when Richard stepped out. I just smiled. "It's just business, right?" My assistant, Jamal, hugged me tight as I left. "This isn't right," he muttered. Several colleagues watched in shocked silence as security escorted me to the lobby. I held my head high, box in hand, walking past the conference room where champagne still waited to celebrate my now stolen victory. In my car, I finally exhaled. My hand moved to my jacket pocket, feeling the outline of the USB drive I'd kept there for months. Just in case. It contained every internal document I'd authored, every contract I'd crafted, every code string I'd personally registered under my name rather than Vanguard's. Richard thought he was cutting me out. He had no idea I had kept receipts for everything. The parking garage was empty as I started my car. Before pulling away, I opened my laptop one last time and sent myself copies of my final email trails, evidence, insurance, ammunition. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. At home, I spread the termination papers across my kitchen island. Most people skip the legal jargon. I didn't. As the daughter of 2 lawyers, I'd learned to read the fine print that others glossed over. That's when I found it. A critical oversight in my termination. According to the acquisition papers I'd signed that morning, I maintained limited power of attorney for 17 days to ensure smooth transition of the client relationship. Richard had been so eager to fire me that he forgot to revoke these temporary powers. I opened my laptop and pulled up the deal documentation. There it was, in black and white. 17 days of legal access to systems, vendor relationships, and contracts, all necessary to ensure deal completion. My hands trembled as I realized what this meant. 17 days wasn't long, but in the tech world, it was an eternity if you knew what to do with it. I poured myself a real glass of champagne this time. 17 days, I whispered to my empty apartment, to burn an empire. A strange calm settled over me. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. Richard had built his career on the backs of people like me. It was time he learned what happens when you betray the wrong person. At 2 a.m., fueled by cold pizza and colder rage, I started executing my plan. Most people didn't know that Vanguard's flagship product ran on code libraries I'd developed through my personal LLC before joining the company. I'd licensed them to Vanguard. I hadn't given them away. I logged into my licensing portal and began the process. One by one, I revoked access to critical API endpoints that powered Vanguard's main services. The beauty was in the simplicity. No hacking, no illegal activity, just exercising my legal right to revoke access to my intellectual property. By 4 a.m., the changes propagated through the system. I watched through remote monitoring tools as error messages began flooding Vanguard's logs. Their main dashboard, the one being demonstrated to a potential client later that day, would start showing errors within hours. I closed my laptop and finally went to bed. My phone buzzed with a text from Jamal as I drifted off to sleep. Something's wrong with the system. Richard is freaking out. I smiled into my pillow. The dashboard would display a simple message to Vanguard's developers. License revoked. Contact owner for renewal. Richard would soon discover exactly who owned what. The next morning I made phone calls. Lots of them. Hey Sarah, it's Harper. Remember that NDA allowing me to discuss your tech with Vanguard? I need to inform you that I've been terminated. One by one, I contacted every vendor and partner in my network. I wasn't asking them to drop Vanguard. I didn't have to. Most of our agreements included clauses that required my personal involvement, and without me, certain confidentiality terms expired automatically. By noon, vendors were going silent on Vanguard. Software partners stopped taking calls. Data providers questioned access rights. Integration specialists cited contract terms requiring my approval for continued service. I didn't lie to anyone. I simply informed them of my departure and reminded them of our contractual terms. The dominoes fell naturally. At 2:17 p.m., a message came from Jamal. Richard just got a call from ServerStack. They're pulling access because your point of contact is no longer with the company. His face turned purple. I smiled. The cascade had begun. What's happening now? I texted back. Jamal's response came seconds later. Total chaos. I can't fix anything. Richard is threatening to fire everyone. Day 3 brought chaos to Vanguard. According to my sources inside, Richard had assembled an emergency team to fix the technical blackout. IT managers were puzzled. They couldn't pinpoint why systems were failing. They only knew that critical services kept timing out or returning error codes. Legal was equally confused. Someone had pulled my employment contracts and discovered the maze of personal IP licenses I'd established. These aren't standard, I imagined them saying. These are airtight. By afternoon, Richard was spiraling. He'd called an all-hands meeting where he'd ranted about sabotage and disloyalty without naming me directly. Employees exchanged confused glances while systems crashed around them. My final move that day was sending an anonymous email to Vanguard's lead investor, Marcus Chen, from a public address that couldn't be traced back to me. Regarding the recent $20 million acquisition, has anyone briefed you on Clause 14B and its implications? You might want to ask Richard about it before the 30-day mark. I knew Marcus wasn't a man who appreciated being kept in the dark. The wheels were turning now. Richard might control the company, but he was about to learn that control is an illusion when the foundation starts to crumble. Clause 14B was my masterpiece. Buried in the 120-page acquisition agreement, it established performance requirements that had to be met within 30 days of signing. If certain key performance indicators weren't achieved, specifically system uptime, user retention, and data processing benchmarks, the full $20 million would revert to the client. The genius part? These KPIs were measured by the very systems I'd just disabled. I'd added the clause as insurance, knowing Richard never read the fine print. The client had readily agreed to it, seeing it as protection for their investment. The company lawyers had approved it, assuming our systems would easily meet these standards. No one connected the dots that I controlled those measurement systems through my personal licenses. Now, with the system offline and vendors going silent, Vanguard couldn't possibly meet the requirements. The 30-day clock was ticking, and roughly $20 million would soon flow back out of Vanguard's accounts. I imagined Richard's face when Marcus Chen called to discuss this minor detail. His CEO had somehow missed. The thought made me smile as I prepared for my next move. The boardroom crisis came faster than I expected. Marcus Chen didn't just call Richard. He flew in for an emergency board meeting, bringing his entire legal team. Through Jamal, I learned that Marcus had erupted when he discovered the reversal clause. You're telling me this entire deal could unravel because of systems that are currently offline? Systems that were apparently owned by the executive you just fired? Other investors joined the panic. Vanguard's stock dropped 12% in a single day as rumors spread about the company's instability. Market analysts began asking questions about the $20 million deal that had been so proudly announced just days earlier. That evening, I sent carefully worded emails to 3 of Vanguard's major investors, people I'd built relationships with during fundraising rounds. In light of recent events, I'd appreciate the opportunity to discuss some alternative perspectives. Dinner next week? All 3 responded within hours. They wanted to meet sooner. My kitchen island was now covered with charts and plans. Richard had thought he was destroying my career. Instead, he had given me the perfect opportunity to build something better. Richard wasn't going down without a fight. On day 7, he launched his counterattack through a company-wide email that quickly leaked to industry blogs. Recent disruptions stem from the actions of a former executive who became increasingly erratic and displayed concerning behavior in her final months. He painted me as unstable, calling my work inconsistent, and claiming I'd become disruptive to team cohesion. He suggested I'd been planning my exit to damage the company, framing my careful licensing as corporate sabotage. The tech blogs ate it up, publishing headlines like Vanguard CEO claims ex-executive went rogue, and drama at Vanguard, did Harper Chen snap after big deal? I remained silent publicly, but privately, I sent a single voice recording to Marcus Chen, a clip from 3 months earlier where Richard had explicitly threatened to take credit for my work on the $20 million deal. When this closes, his voice said clearly in the recording, the board will see it as my victory. That's just how this works, Harper. I'm the CEO. The wins are mine. The recording ended with my calm response. That doesn't seem fair, Richard. His laugh still haunted me. Fair? This is business, Harper. Grow up. The voice recording was just the beginning. I had spent years documenting everything, not because I planned this downfall, but because working with Richard had taught me to protect myself. Now I strategically leaked a series of screenshots to people I trusted in the industry. They showed Richard ignoring compliance warnings, mocking partners behind their backs, and boasting about how he would claim credit for deals he had little to do with. In one particularly damning email, Richard had written, "Let Harper handle the technical details. She's good for that. I'll handle taking the credit with the board." As these screenshots circulated within the industry, Vanguard's reputation took hit after hit. Clients began questioning their relationships. Partners demanded new points of contact. Competitors circled like sharks, sensing weakness. The final blow came when one of Vanguard's investors tweeted cryptically, "Very disturbing information coming to light. Considering recommending criminal investigation into certain practices." Richard's smear campaign had backfired spectacularly. My phone rang constantly now. Reporters seeking comments, former colleagues asking for the real story, even recruiters offering positions. I declined them all. I wasn't looking for a job, I was building a reckoning. On day 10, I released my trump card. Few people knew that I had installed a compliance monitoring tool on Vanguard's systems, with full approval from legal and IT. Its purpose was legitimate: tracking system access to ensure regulatory compliance for our financial services clients. What Richard never realized was that this tool logged everything, including his own activities. Every login, every file accessed, every email sent through company servers. I hadn't planned to use this information, but his smear campaign changed everything. Through an anonymous email account, I sent a compressed file to Vanguard's board of directors. It contained logs showing Richard had accessed confidential client information without authorization. Worse, it showed money transfers to a shell company named Strategic Consulting Services, a company that existed only on paper. The transfers aligned perfectly with new client acquisitions, suggesting a pattern of kickbacks or unauthorized commissions. I included a simple note. This is why he needed me gone. I built the compliance system that caught him. Richard had fired me to hide his tracks. Now those tracks were exposed for everyone to see, highlighted in digital neon. By day 12, Vanguard's corporate culture had completely unraveled. The confident, cohesive team I'd helped build was now fragmented by suspicion and uncertainty. Jamal reported that executives had stopped eating lunch together. People whispered in corners, conversations going silent when Richard walked by. Mid-level managers began updating their LinkedIn profiles, sensing what was coming. The exodus started with Trevor, the CFO, who announced his immediate retirement to spend time with family. Everyone knew he was jumping ship. Then Maria from Product submitted her resignation, followed by 2 senior developers. Each departure weakened Vanguard further. These weren't just employees. They were the institutional knowledge base of the company, walking out the door with critical skills and client relationships. That evening, I received a text from Maria. "You still building that new firm everyone's whispering about? I want in. Bring Trevor too, he's interested." I hadn't even announced my plans yet, but the industry grapevine was already humming with speculation about my next move. Before sleeping, I drafted a business plan with a simple mission statement: building tech with transparency, integrity, and shared credit. Everything Vanguard wasn't. On day 14, I made it official. I registered NovaCore Dynamics as a Delaware C corporation and opened our business bank account with a substantial personal investment. I'd been planning this move for months, though not under these circumstances. Our mission statement was simple: building ethical tech solutions with transparent leadership. It was everything Vanguard claimed to be, but wasn't. The investors I'd met with were eager to provide seed funding. They'd seen the internal documents, heard the recordings, and recognized the opportunity to back the real talent from Vanguard. Within 48 hours, we secured $3 million in initial funding, no small feat for a company that existed only on paper. I carefully timed our press release to coincide with Vanguard's expected layoff announcement. Their bad news would be drowned out by our launch, and tech journalists would inevitably draw the connection. The press release went to the printer. The website prepared to go live. The team, already including 7 former Vanguard employees, waited for the signal. As I finalized the details, I thought about Richard's words. The company is moving in a different direction. He had no idea how right he was. While NovaCore took shape, Vanguard continued its spectacular implosion. They missed the deadline for the performance metrics in Clause 14B, triggering the $20 million reversion. Their biggest client publicly announced they were exploring other options following concerning disruptions. Unable to fix the technical issues I'd created, Richard brought in expensive consultants who recommended a complete system rebuild. The cost estimate, $6 million and 8 months. The board balked. Layoffs began. First contractors, then junior staff, finally hitting middle management. Morale plummeted. Productivity crashed. Each day brought new rumors of Vanguard's demise. When our press release hit the wire, "Meet NovaCore Dynamics, the future of ethical tech solutions," it went viral within hours. The story wrote itself. Former Vanguard executive launches competitor after controversial firing. Tech blogs ran side-by-side comparisons. Vanguard announcing layoffs while NovaCore announced hiring. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. I didn't have to attack Richard publicly. His own actions were doing all the damage needed. As my mother always said, "Give a fool enough rope, and he'll hang himself." Richard had more than enough rope now. On day 17, my final day of power of attorney access, a video appeared on TikTok. It showed Richard during a product pitch meeting 6 months earlier, interrupting my presentation to tell a client what Harper means to say is, before completely misrepresenting the technical specifications. The clip caught me visibly biting my tongue as Richard fumbled through inaccurate explanations. When the client directed a technical question to me, Richard interrupted again. "I'll handle the complex questions." The video ended with Richard's most damning line. "Harper gets too emotional about the technical details. That's why she's not in leadership." The upload came from a former intern's account and received 2 million views in 24 hours. Justice for Harper started trending. I waited a full day before adding a single comment. He told me I was too emotional to lead. Guess emotion builds empires. The comment collected 500,000 likes. Watching from my new office space, I felt an unexpected wave of gratitude toward Richard. Without his betrayal, I might have spent years more under his shadow, never realizing my full potential. The final blow to Richard's credibility came from within. Trevor, the former CFO, went to the Securities and Exchange Commission with documents showing Richard had misrepresented Vanguard's financial health to secure the $20 million acquisition. The doctored revenue projections showed steady growth when actual numbers revealed troubling declines. Richard had bet everything on the acquisition to hide Vanguard's financial problems, only to lose the money through the reversal clause. The SEC opened a formal investigation. Vanguard stock was temporarily suspended from trading pending the inquiry. Investors panicked, demanding emergency board meetings and threatening lawsuits. I received a call from an SEC investigator requesting my cooperation. I agreed immediately, providing copies of all the documentation I had legally obtained during my time at Vanguard. "We've been watching this company for some time," the investigator told me. "But we needed someone with inside knowledge to come forward." I hadn't planned for this level of scrutiny, but Richard's actions had triggered consequences beyond even my calculations. The investigation would take months. Richard's empire wouldn't last that long. In a twist I never expected, Melissa from HR became an unlikely ally. Faced with SEC investigators and potential legal exposure, she chose to protect herself by revealing the truth about my termination. She provided investigators with emails showing Richard had ordered my dismissal the day after I secured the $20 million deal, specifically to prevent me from receiving my contractual bonus and commission. The timing and reasoning were clearly retaliatory, she stated in her official testimony. I was directed to use cultural fit as the official reason, despite Harper's exemplary performance reviews. Her testimony transformed my dismissal from a common corporate layoff into a clear case of wrongful termination and possible fraud. My attorney filed suit within hours, demanding full compensation for my lost bonus, commission, and additional damages for reputational harm. The lawsuit made headlines across tech publications. Vanguard faces multi-million-dollar wrongful termination suit amid SEC investigation. Richard's house of cards was fully collapsing now. When Melissa contacted me directly to apologize, I simply thanked her for her honesty. Sometimes allies come from unexpected places. The emergency board meeting lasted 6 hours. I wasn't present, but Marcus Chen called me immediately after. "It's done," he said simply. "Richard's out." The vote hadn't even been close. 9 votes for removal, 1 abstention, 0 in support. Richard had been stripped of his title, his company email, and his access to the building before the meeting even ended. "He tried to blame you for everything," Marcus explained. "Said you set him up from the beginning. Nobody bought it." The board appointed Trevor as interim CEO, tasking him with stabilizing the company while they assessed whether Vanguard could be saved at all. Richard didn't take his dismissal gracefully. He threatened to sue the board for breach of contract, claiming they had no grounds for termination. The legal team literally laughed as they presented the mountain of evidence against him. "He still doesn't get it," Marcus told me. "He thinks he's the victim in all this." I smiled to myself. Richard had built his career taking credit for other people's work. Now he was taking credit for his own downfall. Desperate and cornered, Richard launched a live stream on LinkedIn, promising to tell the real story behind the Vanguard situation. Over 50,000 people tuned in to watch his meltdown. Red-faced and disheveled, he rambled for 30 minutes about conspiracies against him. He called me a saboteur and accused the board of colluding with me to steal his company. His claims grew increasingly outlandish as the stream continued. The comments section flooded with skepticism. Former employees chimed in with their own experiences working under his leadership. The chat filled with L+ratio comments from younger viewers enjoying the corporate drama. 45 minutes into his rant, the stream abruptly cut off. Twitter erupted with reports that Richard had been arrested on suspicion of financial fraud related to the SEC investigation. Someone posted a blurry photo of him being escorted from his home by federal agents. I didn't comment publicly. I didn't need to. The truth was finally doing all the talking for me. Watching from my apartment that night, I felt no joy in his downfall. Only relief that justice had finally caught up to him. 3 weeks after Richard's arrest, I agreed to a single interview with a respected technology journal. We met in Novacore's new office space, modest but modern, reflecting our focus on substance over show. The interviewer asked thoughtful questions about building ethical tech companies, the importance of proper credit for work, and the challenges women face in leadership. I answered candidly but professionally, never directly attacking Richard or Vanguard. "Do you feel vindicated by what happened?" she asked. "I feel validated," I corrected. "There's a difference. This was never about revenge, it was about truth and accountability." When she asked about my technical innovations, I spoke passionately about the systems I'd built and our vision for improving them at Novacore. The final question came as we wrapped up. "Would you ever consider returning to Vanguard if they offered you the CEO position?" I smiled, taking a moment before answering. Why would anyone buy ashes when they could build something new? The article published a week later, alongside a photo of me standing confidently in our new headquarters. The headline read, "Rising from Rejection, How Harper Chen Turned Firing into Founding." 6 weeks after my termination, Vanguard filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The combination of the $20 million reversal, client departures, and legal troubles had created an insurmountable financial hole. Their official filing cited technical system failures and leadership transitions as contributing factors to their collapse. The tech press was less diplomatic, running headlines like "How One CEO's Ego Destroyed a Promising Tech Company" and "Vanguard's Implosion, a Case Study in Failed Leadership." Meanwhile, Novacore secured an additional $5 million in funding. Our team had grown to 30 employees, many of them former Vanguard talent, eager to work in a more respectful environment. The crowning achievement came when we signed a $30 million contract with Global Tech. Very client who had pulled out of Vanguard after the system failures. They'd been impressed by our transparent approach and technical expertise. In a private message, their CTO wrote, "We're betting on you, Harper. Don't let us down like they did." I promised myself I wouldn't. This wasn't just about building a successful company. It was about creating the culture I'd always wanted, one where credit was shared and respect was the foundation. To celebrate our first major contract, I hosted a small gathering for our team on the rooftop of our office building. Under string lights and stars, we toasted to Novacore's future. Trevor, now our CFO, raised his glass. To Harper, who taught us all that standing your ground isn't just the right thing to do, it's good business. Laughter and applause rippled through the group. These people had taken a risk following me to a startup, betting their careers on my vision rather than Vanguard's established name. As conversations flowed around me, Maria appeared at my side. "Someone asked me today what you would say to Richard if you could talk to him now." She tilted her head curiously. I realized I didn't know the answer. I considered the question, looking out at the city lights and the team we'd built from Vanguard's ruins. Then I lifted my glass slightly. "Thanks for the fire," I said softly. "I forged something better in it." Maria smiled and clinked her glass against mine. "To fires and forges," she said. I nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. "And to building things that last." Richard's trial was still months away when his email arrived in my inbox. The subject line simply read, "Request." "Harper," it began, no greeting or pleasantries. "The industry has overreacted to events at Vanguard. My reputation has suffered unfairly. I'm exploring consulting opportunities to share my leadership expertise while legal matters conclude." My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won out. I read on. "Given your current market position, a strategic alliance could benefit both parties. I could advise Novacore on scaling challenges I've navigated before. Consider this a professional courtesy offer before I approach other firms." The sheer audacity was breathtaking. Even now, he couldn't bring himself to acknowledge what he'd done or offer an apology. He still saw himself as valuable, as the expert who could swoop in and save my company. I crafted a single-sentence reply, smiling as I hit send. We're not a cultural fit. Then I blocked his email address, turned off my computer, and joined my team for lunch. People who understood that real leadership means lifting others up, not stepping on them to reach the top. 1 year to the day after my termination from Vanguard, the Forbes issue hit newsstands nationwide. My photo graced the cover, against a backdrop of code and city lights. The headline read, "The woman who burned the system, then rebuilt it better." The article detailed Nova Corps' meteoric rise, our ethical approach to technology, and the lessons I'd learned from Vanguard's collapse. It mentioned Richard only briefly, noting that his trial for securities fraud would begin the following month. Inside Nova Corps' headquarters, we framed the cover and hung it in our lobby, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of the journey. Beneath it, we placed our company motto, build with integrity, lead with respect, succeed together. That afternoon, I walked through our offices, watching teams collaborate on projects that would have been impossible at Vanguard. The culture we'd created valued ideas over egos, contribution over credit. Jamal, now our chief of staff, handed me the latest client report with a grin. "Still glad you got fired?" I thought about the champagne flute in my hand the day it all began. About the folder sliding across my desk. About the moment everything changed. "They fired the wrong woman," I replied.